Hello guys, it's me again, back with another non-meta build. As always, if you're looking for the latest meta build that's deleting every boss with mirror tier gear, this probably isn't the video for you. I like making off-meta builds that actually work, and the best part is they're usually a lot cheaper than most of the meta builds you see online. So let's get started. Today's build revolves around Hailstorm Rounds, and I'll keep this as quick and straightforward as possible. The important pieces you need are Constricting Viper, Defy support, Emergency Reload, Fresh Clip support, Shard Scavenger, and any reliable way to consume freeze. In my case, I'm using Fragmentation Rounds. So how does this build actually work? For boss fights, my combo always goes like this. First, I fire Hailstorm Rounds, releasing all of the bolts I've stored. Then I immediately use Emergency Reload, which instantly reloads Hailstorm and empowers every bolt. The gem description says that the number of empowered bolts is equal to the maximum ammunition in the clip. So yes, every single bolt gets the damage bonus. Now here's where things get even better. I'm also using Fresh Clip, which gives 1% more damage for every bolt reloaded by that skill within the last 8 seconds. My level 26 Hailstorm Rounds with 20% quality stores 61 bolts and plus 1 from my crossbow, giving me a total of 62 bolts. That means Fresh Clip alone gives me 62% more damage. So if you combine that with level 20 emergency reload, my second set of Hailstorm Rounds is dealing roughly 93% more damage. And that's before we even get into the rest of the combo. The next step is to consume freeze. And trust me, Hailstorm Rounds freeze incredibly fast because of its massive freeze buildup. And for my freeze consume, I'm using Fragmentation Rounds since it deals a huge burst of damage against frozen enemies. But if you don't want to use Fragmentation Rounds, that's completely fine. Just make sure you're using something that can consume freeze, like Biting Frost support. Consuming freeze is extremely important because it activates Shard Scavenger. Here's the important part of that skill. Whenever you consume freeze, shock, ignite, or fully broken armor, Shard Scavenger reloads your crossbow, restores 1 grenade cooldown, and most importantly, it grants a buff that makes your crossbow attacks not consume bolts for a short duration. That's the entire reason this build works. Once that buff is active, I can spam Hailstorm Rounds without spending any ammunition. The base duration is 3 seconds, but with prolonged duration 2, I get around 4 seconds. 4 seconds might not sound like much, but during a boss fight, it's actually a very long time. You can unload multiple hailstorms before the buff expires. Now, there's one problem though. At level 26, Hailstorm costs around 396 mana every time you fire it. If you try to spam it normally, you'll run out of mana almost immediately. That's where Defy and Constricting Viper come in. Defy makes your hits lucky while you're surrounded, which is good, and insufficient mana doesn't prevent the use of supported skills while surrounded. And Constricting Viper reduces the number of nearby enemies needed to count as surrounded. A few leagues ago, this interaction was nerfed, so you can no longer reduce it to 0. The game specifically says the required number of enemies can't be reduced below 1. And during boss fights, guess what? The boss is that one enemy. So the interaction still works, which means I can keep spamming Hailstorm Rounds without worrying about my mana. Let me show you the Bodak fight again so you can see the combo in action. So in this clip, First, I fired my stored Hailstorm bolts. Then I cast Freezing Mark linked with the Charge Mark support. So when the mark triggers, it leaves shock ground for even more damage. And then next, I use emergency reload and fire my second set of hailstorm rounds, which is now fully empowered, well, because of the emergency reload. And I actually even forgot to place my banner before firing the hailstorm round, so that's my mistake. Once Bodak gets frozen, I use fragmentation rounds to consume the freeze and activate Charge Scavenger. From there, I just spam Hailstorm rounds until the boss gets deleted. And honestly, for regular mapping, it's even crazier because most map bosses don't even survive the fragmentation rounds hit. So, I don't even get the chance to spam Hailstorm. So before we continue, if you're enjoying the build or found this video helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. It helps out a lot, especially since I'm still a small creator. And if you're into non-meta builds, off-meta interactions, and builds you don't normally see on YouTube, that's exactly what this channel is all about. So thank you so much for the support. Now, for my Ascendancy, I'm using a Lich with the low life setup that lets me take advantage of Execute 3 and Dire Strike and several powerful low life passive nodes in the tree. So, a few more notes before we wrap things up. First of all, overwhelming presence is completely optional. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. The same goes for Herald of Ice. The reason I don't value Herald of Ice that much in this setup is because Hailstorm Rounds doesn't play like Ice Shot or Lightning Arrow, where you can hit enemies from far away and let Herald of Ice chain explosions across the entire screen. And also, Hailstorm rounds this its damage in a relatively small area, especially in my setup, since I'm using concentrated area for better boss damage. So when it comes to map clearing, don't expect it to perform like Ice Shot or Lightning Arrow with all their chaining and forking and screen wide clear. Instead, what really makes Hailstorm feel good while mapping is the reload speed. As you can see here, after firing Hailstorm rounds, thanks to all the reload speed I've picked up from my passive 3 jewels and crossbow, right here, increase the reload speed. I'm reloading around 10 to 12 bolts every second. So, check this out. That lets me keep firing Hailstorm almost nonstop while clearing maps. So if you're planning to play this build, I'd definitely recommend investing into reload speed whenever you can. And since I'm playing Lich, I also get to take advantage of Crystalline Phylactery, which doubles the effect of non-union jewels socketed into it. That means my 15% increased reload speed jewel becomes 30%, which is a huge boost. And with this league's crafting, you can probably make even stronger reload speed jewels, although I'm pretty sure they're going to cost a fortune. Now, if Hailstorm Rounds doesn't feel comfortable enough for clearing, you can always use another skill like Permafrost Bolts together with Herald of Ice. Again, Herald of Ice is completely optional if you're planning to clear maps with Hailstorm Rounds alone. Overwhelming presence is also optional. Even without it, I can consistently freeze bosses thanks to freezing mark, so you don't need a high spirit setup for this build. I'm also using War Banner, but that's optional too if you want a little extra damage. And now about the passive tree, I'm using weapon set skill points for my Hailstorm setup. I've mainly invested those points into reload speed and freeze freeze buildup. It's much easier to see exactly where those points are allocated in the path of building, so I'll leave the build link in the video description. And one more tip, you don't actually need two different crossbows just to use weapon swapping. All you have to do is right click this part right here, which locks the crossbow, so you can use it in weapon set 1 and weapon set 2. I'm also using that articulated gloves for rage generation together with berserk. Don't worry too much about the 5% life loss from the gloves. Since we're playing Lich with eternal life, it's not really an issue. And that said, these gloves are completely optional. If you'd rather use gloves with plus 2 projectile skills, that's perfectly fine too. And finally, you don't have to play this build as Lich. I chose Lich because I wanted to build around the low life setup, but you can absolutely play this on another Ascendancy if that's what you prefer. And that's it for this video. If you enjoyed the build or found this guide helpful, please, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
None can oppose me. Out of mana. Oy, Ed!